didn't want to be stuck on my comfort zone and doing the same things. I was already a dentist technician in Brazil. I was already working with very good dentists in Brazil. So I could easily stay in Brazil and just continue to grow whatever I had at the time. But I thought, you know what, I want something different. And that's part of me as well, to never settle, always challenge myself, be excited with the unknown, and embrace the challenge of doing something completely new. And that's why I went to Chicago, even though I had zero money, zero experience, and knew nobody in US at that time.
I wanted to kick us off by having you share with the audience a little bit about the early part of your career. So you are a, decades in the making overnight success, as they say. But what I think most people don't realize or appreciate are the really early days. And I would love you to share the story about being a young professional, showing up in Chicago, not knowing anybody, with a CD in hand or whatever, and putting yourself in luck's way, so to speak. Can you just share with the audience that story?
Yeah, I think that the best way to, I think the highlight of that moment of my life, even though I didn't have the experience yet, today looking back, I realized that I had an important combination of two factors that I think I always tell young people, it's the humbleness with the confidence together. We see young people that are very smart that can easily lose a little bit of the humbleness. And we also see people with a lot of potential that don't have enough confidence. So you need to find, in an early phase of your career, you need to find that confidence, even though there's so much to be learned, and you need to keep your humbleness. So this combination is extremely powerful, because also unconsciously is what makes mentors want to bring you under their wing. That's the type of people that, powerful people will look and say, this young guy is interesting, right? And doors start to open. So I was able to, for a few reasons, have this combination and have the ambition to work outside Brazil, and had the opportunity to go to Chicago midwinter many, many years ago with that ambition of finding my mentors, finding the next stage of my life, understanding that I needed to move on, that I didn't want to be stuck on my comfort zone and doing the same things. I was already a dentist technician in Brazil. I was already working with very good dentists in Brazil. So I could easily stay in Brazil and just continue to grow whatever I had at the time. But I thought, you know what, I want something different. And that's part of me as well, to never settle, always challenge myself, be excited with the unknown, and embrace the challenge of doing something completely new. And that's why I went to Chicago, even though I had zero money, zero experience, and knew nobody in US at that time. But I was able to open these connections through mentors in Brazil and meet the right people. And as you know, everybody that has something going on is usually busy. Everybody that is already succeeding is usually busy. So you usually have probably a few seconds of their attention when you see them the first time. And you need to be very, very effective on your first impression.
And so you, to kind of clarify, you didn't know anybody, but maybe had, a name or your mentors or colleagues in Brazil mentioned a couple people to try to seek out and just make that kind of chance encounter happen.
My entry door, the initial opportunities came to me because I was a technician, right? And that was a decision I made, when I finished dental school. I was already then doing lab work and already working with some very good dentists and doing nice work already as a technician. And I had two options, the obvious option that was become a dentist and stop being a technician for other dentists. And that's what everybody expected from me. Now you're a doctor, now, leverage your diploma and your status. Doctors make more money than technicians. So go do your dentistry. And of course, use your technician experience to do your cases. The other option was, even though you are a doctor, even though you are a dentist, why not stay working as a technician for other dentists? So technically speaking, or, the rationale, at that time was to put myself on a lower level, and continue to be a technician. But what came to my mind at that point was, if I become a dentist, I know I can become a very good dentist. And I know that my lab experience will help me become an even better dentist, but I'm going to be just one more very good dentist. If I continue as a technician, I will become the only technician that is a doctor, but decided to continue to work for you, dentist, as a technician. So when you introduce your technician to your patient, you're actually introducing a doctor working as a technician, right? So for me, I said, look, that's probably the shortcut to differentiate myself, becoming a smile designer, becoming a smile architect, a completely different type of technician. And because I did that, that's the reason why the doors opened, because as a dentist, you cannot work outside your country. You don't have the license to practice. As a technician, you can work anywhere. So I was, a friend of mine, actually a friend of my father, that knew some important dentists in US. He told me, Christian, if you're willing to continue to work as a ceramist, there are some top dentists in US looking for very good ceramists, and I can bring you with me to this big event in US and introduce you to them. And if they like you, let's see what happens. And that's how I ended up at the Chicago Midwinter, connecting with the first important people that I was able to meet, and exposing myself for the first time.
It's interesting, and I want to kind of fast forward us then to the digital smile design chapter, but it's almost like to continue on the iteration of your journey, you then, you found this kind of niche that you could really own, and now have found a way to not just kind of be that, we'll call it expert for your own cases, for, which are limited by your two hands and the 24 hours in a day, but you've figured out how to really supercharge and magnify that by teaching, right? And
yeah, but just to emphasize, I think it's important, the strategy of differentiation in any stage of your life. When we ask ourselves what I'm going to do next, there's usually more than one option. I like always to choose what makes me more different, even more than make me better on something. I like to say, different is more powerful than better. If you're a different professional, of course we always want to get better, but if you tell somebody, I'm better, or I'm the best, if you say I'm different, that attracts much more curiosity. And if you can really show why you're different, that's the shortcut. So I think it's important in every key moment, in our lives, to go through cycles, and you have these moments where you need to really say, okay, I need to make some important choices, define my next 5 years, in what direction. So I think the differentiation factor, of course, at that time, I did it many things I did intuitively. Nowadays, looking back, I can rationalize it and explain it. But I think that, thank God, I had, good intuition at that moment to realize that it was all about differentiation.
So then tell us about that decision to launch Digital Smile Design as a company and do that differently. And I'd love if you could share a little bit about the early days of the company. And if there was ever any kind of question or doubt in your mind about success, about the path to success through making a company out of this concept.
Doubt, of course, always. I think the older you get, the more doubts you have. The younger you are, the more 100% sure you are. That's why you make more mistakes. Honestly speaking, DSD was not a project that was planned from inception. Nowadays I don't have a business background. And more recently, of course, the last decade, I've been knowing and learning a lot from business people. And business people, usually they start a business with a very clear business foundation, a very clear business model, a very clear exit strategy before they even start. I had absolutely nothing like that, right? And things just started to happen on the first, I would say, decade of DSD. Of course, that now recently, the last 5 years, we've been now structuring our decisions with a more business-oriented mindset. But at the beginning, it was a very naive, idealistic business model. Was me lecturing, basically, about ideas that I was putting together with my experience as a dentist technician. I was very good connecting these two worlds and understanding the limitations and bottlenecks and pain points. And I started to organize these bottlenecks and started to develop solutions for these bottlenecks. and started to create systems to overcome them. And I started to lecture about that. And I was lucky enough to get social media just starting. I was among the first ones to really leverage social media in dentistry professionally, sharing content in a professional way on social media, 15 years ago more. And, things took off in terms of awareness, and my courses became very successful, but it was just courses. I would go give courses, get paid, and go home. Two things happened. First, I realized that after several years lecturing about DSD, satisfaction on the courses was amazing, and I was very proud of it. But what I started to realize was that most people was doing nothing with information. They loved the information, and they were doing nothing with information, meaning it was not generating change. Implementation was not existing. So I realized that I needed to do something beyond just normal courses. And the other factor was that at that time, I'm talking about 2013, 12, 13, I met a business person that made me two questions. And it's incredible to realize that this was only 13 years ago, 12 years ago. First question he asked me was, Christian, what is your business model? And I kind of didn't have an answer. I was like, I asked him to explain, what do you mean with the business model, right? And then he explained me what was a business model. And I said, oh, so my business model is I go, I lecture, they pay me, and I go home. And he told me that's not very smart. And then he asked me a second question. What is your exit strategy? And I have to confess, 13 years ago, that was the first time ever that I actually heard about it. So I asked him, explain me what an exit strategy is. It's like, what you're going to do with your business. You're going to be with your business forever. You want to do this till the day you die, or you want at one moment to monetize it, leverage it, passive income, do something else. That's an exit strategy. And then I confessed to him, I said, I have no clue. I have no exit strategy. And I never thought about what is next. And, until when I'm going to be doing this. And it's amazing that, I thought I was a kind of a smart guy at that time. And I realized today that these two questions are, they are so fundamental. They are so basic, right? So this business guy helped me and kind of partnered up with me. He was the first investor in DSD. He said, okay, these ideas are too good, to be just wasted with you just lecturing. I have an infrastructure. He owned at that time DSO and a software company. And he said, look, so we're going to join forces and we're going to create a service company to help dentists implement DSD ideas. And at that time, I was already thinking about that, so I said, okay, so first we need to create a planning center to allow dentists to leverage technology, and we can help them plan the cases with technology. We're going to start a lab to manufacture with technology so they can leverage technology on the manufacturing of devices and restorations. We're going to start a marketing agency because we need to help dentists to tell a story why this is also cool and differentiate themselves towards their patients. We're going to start a coaching consultancy service to help them train their team, onboard the staff, and make things happen. And that's how the DSD became a real company. That's 2014, 15, where we started to not only professionalize the courses, but then create all these services that people could use after the courses.
Yeah, Christian, first off, it's a pleasure to meet you. As you're going through your story, which I love, and I like the fact that the business guy asked you two questions, and when we distill it down, it's really what are you doing and where are you going? Like it's almost like that's the way of doing the same thing. And I agree. It's like one of those moments you take a look back and you're like, yeah, I was just doing things. I actually didn't fundamentally understand what I'm doing. It's I'm doing things. And then, so good way to reframe it. One of the questions I have is, based on that evolution of that journey from just doing, call it these courses, to now lab services, consulting services, implementation services, like what does that business look like today? Like imagine it was 100% courses like before, but now it's probably a pie chart of sorts of like, well, we have X amount of our business comes from this. And what does that distribution look like now that you're a bigger enterprise?
So we have basically two business models today. One is towards dentists, and that's what we've been talking about. And now as well towards companies. We've been advising and consulting for companies and investing in companies as well. So that's something we can also talk about. But on the dentist, so DSD, we can help the dentist grow and we can help a dental company grow, right? On the dental side, we have these pillars. So education, planning center, lab, marketing, and coaching. Okay. Now, until pandemic, pre-pandemic, education was 70%, 80% of the whole thing. Pandemic really helped us accelerate the development of the other pillars. And today, the services are 60% of the company, and the courses are 40% of the company. Education is going more and more online. The planning center needs to evolve into AI. The lab became the core of our business, so the manufacturing of everything that is necessary to do the smile transformation became the core of our business. Marketing is an add-on for our VIP clients that pay a membership to get access to that support. It's also something that we are always very proud. You saw my title there, brand narrative architect. Life, made me a marketeer, a communicator, a content generator, and that we do a lot of that for dentists and for companies. So that's a service that we give to our best clients. And now we are developing the coaching services as well, because we've been doing these coaching services, but we've been focusing more and more on it, customized pathways for dental practices that really want to take DSD to the next level. So the services are the majority of a bigger part of our business nowadays. Education is, of course, the gateway, is the starting point. People come to us through that. Maybe in the future, what we see is education. As the other services grow in terms of revenue, we can leverage more and more education, subsidize education, and even make it more accessible, since the revenue comes from services afterwards. So that's the transition that we are going.
Yeah, I like that. It's kind of one of those where, one, these services are complementary in nature, but then now, as you've already said, like, you went from almost being 70% education, now 40%, the rest services. And now you've ballooned a part of your business that can actually supplement and offset payments for that gateway. Do you want people through the door? So, the bigger you can make that door and less obstacles to come through. It sounds like that's exactly what you're doing.
Exactly.
So, Christian, I would love to hear your thoughts around almost the paradox that emerges when a business scales, particularly as it pertains to level and quality of service. So, this is relevant for DSD, it's relevant for an individual private practice or for a DSO. Do you feel that there's necessarily a loss or a diminishing return on quality of service with scale? Or is there a way that a company can, implement systems and processes to support quality at scale? If we zoom out and look at hospitality, largely speaking, you have these well-recognized brands. You have the Four Seasons and the likes, which are huge companies, but have made their mark as a luxury brand with scale. And so the question is, it's not just for the individual private practice to DSO, but also for digital smile design. I mean, the more companies that you consult with, the larger the bandwidth that you need, the larger the team. And do you feel like there's this necessary give of quality and excellence with scale?
That's a great question. This is what I think. I really love strategies, and we see that happening in many different industries, strategies that allows us to grow with quality. But you will always do better quality when you're smaller. Four Seasons, you use the example, is amazing. Every hotel, hundreds of hotels, thousands of people working in the company. Everywhere you go, you have a high quality standard service. It's really impressive. But if you want to go beyond, you're going to find places that are very unique and small and boutique, that you're going to have an experience that is even better. Now, of course, that the places that are very small and even better in terms of hospitality and experience in general, quality, if, everybody goes through that temptation, we are becoming famous because we are so good. We are the best, that we see all these opportunities to scale. And then as you scale, even though you can scale with ultra quality, it's never going to be the same as when you were just one. The same thing with restaurants. The Michelin restaurant is always a one location restaurant with an amazing team and chef every day there, generating that unbelievable experience. As soon as that chef opens a second or third location, I can guarantee that it can definitely be amazing as well, not at the same level as the first one little step below. Now, so the question is, you can grow with quality, but if you want the best, you're not going to go to a chain. You're going to go to somewhere that is unique. So I always like to, I really believe that quality in dentistry is not scalable. Quality in dentistry is not scalable. You have what I call the gold standard size of practice. That there's a variation, of course, but if you pick the best dentists in the prime time of their career, when they were combining the best experience with the best skills, working every single day, controlling all the details, no rush, not focus on numbers, not focus on growing the team, scaling the production. This is the dentist that I would go if I needed a full mouth rehabilitation. I have friends that scaled with amazing quality in dentistry, and I have friends that stayed on that gold standard. If I have a problem, I know the friend that I'm going, right? Even though I'm proud of both, and I don't judge. I think everybody, there's space for everybody, and Four Seasons is not bad, right? But when people say, no, we can scale and keep the quality, no, you can scale with quality, but you're always going to struggle, with certain details when you scale. So it's different. It's just you can scale the marketing, you can scale the BS, you can scale fooling people, that creating the illusion that is as good as it used to be, but it's not the same thing. You're muted, Scott.
Thank you. I want to piggyback and dive even a little bit deeper here then. When you talk about the ideal size and the quote unquote gold standard, in your mind, is this the individual single doc practice that has, super, super high level skill, say, for all the restorative, maybe a prosthodontist, et cetera? Mm-hmm. Or is it maybe that like Team Atlanta interdisciplinary team where actually in the same location you have a big team with a lot of perspectives, and there is a difference there. There is a dance that has to be danced, and coordination that has to happen for the magic to happen. So curious to hear thoughts around that kind of like quote unquote ideal practice scenario.
So I've been observing practices, as a technician. I worked with some of the best dentists in the world, all over the world, from Asia to Middle East, Europe, North America, South America. And I always loved to analyze the different styles and different workflows and different sizes. That's why I talk about this gold standard of, if I could write down, actually I did write down what I believe is the ideal. If I would have, a billionaire would come to me and say, Christian, don't worry about money. I have all the money in the world. I want you to build the best dental clinic in the world, and just think about quality. Don't worry about anything else, right? Because, money is not an issue. That is the practice that I'm talking about, right? So you are probably, and of course there's not one strict recipe. Of course, there's probably variations, but yes, you're talking about one superstar dentist or maybe two working together if they are a good partnership, relationship. I can see two. I have some examples of two partners working together very, very well. You have, that type of number of chairs that is completely controlled by these two superstars at their prime time. You're talking about maybe 5 chairs, 6 chairs, maybe 7, 8 chairs, max 10, right? That you can have that very no pressure, slow dentistry process, right? No rush. You're talking about a place that can have a few associates, super good associates that are very happy to be there as associates under the guidance of these two. But these two superstar dentists are not wanting to slow down and have the associates do everything. They want to do everything themselves, and the associates are kind of helping them with everything that others can do as good as they can. So you're talking about a practice that has all the specialties, either working full time or not, but specialists are coming in to treat the patient on the same location. The patient doesn't need to go anywhere else. And by being on the same environment, you have that natural exchange of know-how and ideas that only in-person relationship can bring. You're talking about that this size of practice that provides that unique, exclusive hospitality experience because of the size. You don't have too many people in the waiting room. Usually we're talking about seeing 1 or 2 patients per half day. We're talking about a practice that is seeing very few patients per day, and the business model is designed for that. So you have 3-4 top assistants, 2 for each doctor rotating. You have an in-house little lab, at least to retouch, refine, and do some customizations. Very vital to have an in-house lab in this type of practice. So this is the picture that I have in my mind, of what this gold standard should be. Now, as soon as you achieve that, and there's not many around the world on that level, right? Usually because it's hard to get to that level, and many people that got to that level went to the next step to scale beyond that. As I said, I don't judge. The brave ones that got to that level and decided, you know what, I can make more money in other ways, but I'm going to just stay here delivering the best possible dentistry in this planet, day after day, year after year.
So one more follow-up to this, and then Jinesh, I'll pass it back to you. Most dentists in the audience listening obviously don't have this ideal setup. This is an extremely rare thing you're describing. And from having binged your Coffee Break with Coachman podcast, I sort of have a good insight into your thinking, which is, most we'll say independent GPs that have their own practices should kind of put together this, I'll call it a network or even a remote team together via whatever chat message they have. You call it asynchronous communication. So sharing notes, sharing photos, cases, etc., to get input and insights from all of their kind of specialist friends, if you will. And then, it sounds like your thought process or all of us as a profession has evolved from, best care for the patient, evolving from interdisciplinary, meaning multiple different dental specialists, to, now including different medical physicians. And we're kind of zooming out even more, including this sort of more holistic view. Is that the recommendation to the GP to put together sort of a their Rolodex, so to speak, of contacts that they can lean on for questions about cases? Or what is the best way for the independent GP that doesn't, let's say most of their friends are other GPs and they don't really have this network to navigate to perform at the highest level that they can, we'll say?
So as you said, the gold standard is there for us to be inspired by it. Not everybody needs to become this to be successful. Not everybody, there's space for everybody, and we need all different, this type of gold standard. It's really an expensive type of dentistry, and it's not for everybody. And we know that. We were talking about quality despite of the cost. Now, my lecturing, my philosophy, methodology, DSD in general is like, okay, we have that gold standard. The vision is clear. How can we bring in the best way possible this quality to normal practices, right? And how can we make a normal GP do better towards that vision? So, of course, you need to leverage technology. Or if a friend of mine comes and say, Christian, I got you. I understand your gold standard, but I have 10 locations. And I'm not going to go back to what you're saying. Now, help me do the best I can in my 10 locations, right? Or another dentist comes to me and say, Christian, I understand your gold standard, but I'm in the middle, in an area, rural area, patients cannot afford this. That's not me. That's not the type of public that I'm seeing and treating. How can you help me do the best I can based on your vision? So that is the goal, to understand what is the best possible, and then reverse engineer into what is possible to you, into your reality. And of course, leveraging technology is one of the best ways to democratize quality, right? To make it more accessible, to standardize processes and systems to improve outcomes. So you mentioned, team communication. Okay, Christian, I understand the gold standard, all the specialists coming together, working together under the same roof, etc. It's impossible for me. How can I do the best possible towards that? Asynchronous communication, patient digitalization, AI. You have many tools to allow you to make better decisions, even though you don't have the gold standard for you. There's so much. What is happening is that before, without technology, gold standard was always there, and everybody else was very far from it. Technology, gold standard will always be gold standard and will always be better. But technology is closing the gap, meaning everybody that is doing average dentistry, if you're smart and you implement good technology, you're going to be closer to the gold standard.
So understanding limitations and then elevating the game of the individual within the confines of their own limitations in a way. It's interesting because your commentary is very similar to what a lot of people say about AI in general, is that you're still going to have the cream of the crop, but for everybody else that's not as good, it's going to, those that use it, it'll give them a little bit of a leg up. So, all right, Jinesh, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Guys, no, I'm just fascinated by the conversation, especially by the fact that, we go over this a lot in our podcast, where Scott has great conversations with other dentist people, practitioners, because he gets in that world, and I just get to admire from afar is like what goes through your head from time to time, especially people who are practicing doctors that are building companies at the same time. So one of the things, though, as we were doing research on you, Christian, is that we found that you do a lot of this personal health and wellness benefit, and you talk about how that's improved your life and your being, and part of this is just, can you walk us through that journey of like how you started implementing personal health and wellness as part of your entire career, as to like where you are today and how it's improved your ability to run your businesses and even your way to think through the world? And I know from a lot of us starting our businesses day one, it's all about business surviving. You don't sleep well, you don't eat healthily, you go fast food because it's quick. You're in this grind mode, but then there's a moment you have to kind of step out. So I want to hear that journey from you, and then like what you would tell your younger self, like when you're back in your 30s, to what you would do here.
Yeah. People talk about balance and quality of living, etc. Balance is overrated. I gave up on trying to find balance a long time ago, and being stressed or mad at myself because of that. And yes, you have to grind for many, many years. There's no problem, and you need to be ready for it. And you're gonna spend, many, many years on survival mode. I spent, more than 10 years survival mode. Was one day after the other. Horrible lifestyle, and that's part of the process, and I really believe on that concept that only suffering can make you grow. And I really believe in that. Really, really, really. So people ask me if you could go back and help your younger self to avoid, suffering and struggling, what would you tell your younger self? And my answer is, I wouldn't tell anything. I would let me struggle and suffer. And I would just probably support my younger self, saying, don't worry, keep moving. Removing the problems will not allow you to grow. So the focus for me would be to look at my younger self and help me on how do I react to the problems, right? And how do I get up faster and stronger after the problems, and not try to avoid the problem. Because if you know the future and you're going backwards to your younger self, you know the future. So you can say, look, on January 22nd of 1996, don't say yes, say no to this, right? That's easy. Or going backwards and saying, but that's not the point, because that yes was a disaster and it made me grow so much. So the point here is, you're going to struggle, you're going to suffer, you're going to have a shitty lifestyle, but you need to have a plan. You need to have a deadline. You need to define some landmarks. You need to be very strong on, I want this to happen in 3 to 5 years, and really structure things in a more pragmatic way, not staying only on the ideas, but on the execution of the process. So, of course, that today I'm able to have a decent, nice lifestyle. You need to, for me, it's like this. It doesn't matter how hard you work. Make sure that you love exercising. It's as simple as that. Just get out there and exercise.
Yeah.
What else can you say? Get out there, exercise. And sleep. Okay, so you're grinding. You're 25, survival mode. You need to sleep as well as you can. That's a superpower. Mm-hmm. And one of the most important things to sleep, even when you're like desperate, without money, and a disaster is about to happen, is to trust the process, is to have that mental strength to just turn off, something. You're in the middle of the hurricane and you can just like, you know what? Don't take yourself too seriously. When you think you're ultra cool, something is really working fine, don't take yourself too seriously. When you're in deep shit, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take the problems, more seriously than they can they should be treated. And have faith on the process. If you're doing the best you can, if you're extremely ethical, if you're thinking you're not screwing anybody, you're trying your best, you're working hard, and a huge problem is about to hit you, you need to be able to lay down in bed and say, you know what, I'm going to just sleep. I'm going to sleep. Tomorrow morning, I can wake up 5 a.m., whatever, and I'm going to continue to do my best. What else can I do? I'm going to continue to do my best. And I think that having that mentality, even when you're young, it's a superpower. So with that mentality, you sleep slightly better than others. That is a superpower. That allows you to do a little bit better than the others. And that allows you to have enough mental health and a little bit more time to do some type of exercise. I was lucky to love sports my whole life. So that is another superpower. Loving sports is a superpower because you want to do it, right? So I think these are two things that for me are key.
Awesome. We've got more questions than we're going to be able to get to, but I want to try to sneak in a few more here. You mentioned that on your podcast that it was almost a liberating feeling when you got rid of your last corporate sponsorships, when you were no longer the face or the spokesperson for other companies' products. Can you share a little bit more detail about that? And do you feel like that being sponsored by companies did, in fact, subconsciously influence your ability to talk about, to truly share your feelings about products or technologies or systems? Just a little more insight there.
No, yeah. So as an educator, being able to lecture completely commercial free is a superpower as well. Of course, that I'm a professional speaker and I do receive sponsorship from companies, right? So when I can lecture and I don't have any connections with companies, you have that good feeling that, even though I was always able to combine both in a very ethical way, of course, disclosing everything, people knowing exactly where I'm coming from, my commercial bias, but when you're sponsored by a company or you're working on a project with a company, yes, you're biased, but you're also biased by your own ideas and your own creation. An article that you wrote, you say, no, I wrote this article without any commercial interest from any company. Yes, but you have your ideas there that you're going to defend in a biased way, period. So for me, more important, we all have our interests in subjects. So it's much more important as a communicator to make it very clear, to self-analyze, to analyze yourself. Say, look, I am defending this position, but I have to be honest. Of course, I have my own bias here because I was involved with this idea 10 years ago, or I was part of the publication of this article. I'm very proud of the article. The moment you're proud of your article, you're biased, right? The moment you think you had a great idea, I have a great idea, I'm going to lecture about it. You're biased. You think your idea is great. So you need to be constantly making that, detaching yourself from your ideas, analyzing the topics that you're talking about, and regardless if a company is sponsoring you or not. If you can do that, you can be a much more effective speaker teacher, even if you're getting paid by companies. You go through the process and you tell the story to people on how you're analyzing technologies and products and ideas, and telling people where you're coming from and why you're getting into these conclusions, instead of just saying, I use this because this is good. Yeah. So it's a lot connected to the ego. Controlling your ego, that is a superpower.
Yeah, being truly intellectually honest is actually a very difficult thing to do. So I want to ask a little bit of a wild card question and then pass it to Jinesh for an investment related question. Why are such a disproportionate number of the highest level lab technicians Brazilian? What is it in the culture, in the water? What's
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think there's a couple of factors. You see moments in dentistry in the beginning, 60s, 70s, 80s, the top ones were Europeans. Then 80s, 90s, Asians, a lot of Asians became very good, well-known. And then yes, on the 2000s, a lot of Brazilian technicians, right? I'm very proud to be able to say that I was part of the movement at the beginning. Creating this reputation, opening doors. Many Brazilian ceramists that are nowadays all over the world, I helped them, connecting them and helping them with the process of working overseas. Why so many great ceramists, great technicians in Brazil? I think there's a natural artistic thing in Brazil. We are a very artistic, our culture is very artistic in general. Music, dance, art, architecture, etc. We are very visual. We are very aesthetically driven. That's why plastic surgery is so big in Brazil. Aesthetic dentistry is so big in Brazil. So we are very visual. We have a very visual culture as well. But there's another factor that I think is because, in US, for example, you have, of course, huge number of talented people that could become amazing ceramists. But because the country is so rich, you have so many opportunities. The people with that level of talent will never say, you know what, I'm going to do ceramics for a dentist. When you have that level of talent in a country like US, you're going to do something else. Now, when you have that level of talent in a third world country or in the underdeveloping country, the options are not so bright and so big, So being a ceramist and working overseas is it's a success story for a Brazilian, for a mid-class Brazilian, right? And pursuing that path sounds very good when you are young, and you have potential and you see that you can do it, and that there's a lack of people doing that on rich countries, because the rich people don't want to go through the struggle to have to become good at something so complex, So you see that happening in the world, where certain professions that require so much effort to become good, the rich countries are bringing people from outside to do that.
That makes sense. Yeah. And so, Christian, I know, we're coming up here at the top of the hour, so appreciate all the time that you've given us. We know it's super valuable for you. The last question kind of we want to end on here is on the investment side of what you do. Because one of the things that you mentioned now is you're starting to invest in some of these newer technology companies. Mm-hmm. And so I guess our question, because we're curious about new products, new things coming through is, as you go through that new chapter of investing into the dental technologies, like what kind of companies are you excited about or things that you're looking for? And then also, does the product or company have to be in some way synergistic to what you're doing at DSD, or is it really a standalone that you're evaluating? So how do you think about that as you're going into this world?
This is how we moved from helping dentists grow to also helping dental companies grow. Started several years ago, as you can imagine, with all our courses and this huge social media online community following that we have. Of course, companies were always coming to us and say, Christian, I want to partner up. How can you show my product on your courses? How can we present this to the DSD community? So it started as, being part of our courses, normal. But then we started to realize that we could help companies beyond just product placement, right? We acquired so much know-how on the business of dentistry, on the marketing side of dentistry, on the R&D side of dentistry, on the education side of dentistry, that we created a project to help companies in a more professional, organized way. Okay, you want your product on our courses, but we want to help you beyond that. So we created a package of advantages for companies to collaborate, and we became a consultancy company for companies, basically connecting R&D to storytelling to education, right? So we became advisors for the marketing department of the company. We became advisors for the R&D department, and we helped the company to make better choices on what they need to develop, how they need to develop that, and how do you tell the story about why you're developing that, and then how do you teach the sales team and the educators on how to present those ideas. And this became very, very good, and more companies started to join the program, and it became an parallel business, right? Independent from DSD. Of course, leveraging the know-how and the ideas and methodology and the community of DSD, but happening by itself, to the point that we started to get companies coming, Christian, I love to get your support. I don't have the money to pay for your support. Would you be happy to get some equity? And that showed us the potential of moving even further into that direction and starting an investment fund. And that's what we did 2 years ago. with a group of top key opinion leaders. So you're basically having a group of opinion leaders that are investing in the fund, and the fund is selecting the companies that deserve our money and our support. So instead of serving as consultant and being paid as a consultant, we can also now have skin in the game and invest on the opportunities that we do believe. And then, of course, all this consultancy makes even more sense because we are helping a company grow that we also have a little piece of. So sweat equity or investments for real became part of the process. And this part of the project is going very well.
That makes sense.
Christian, can you share, so to kind of open up some exposure for you, share with folks that may be listening that have companies that would like to, get in touch with you or your team, send you a deck. What's the best way for them to go about that?
I think the easiest way to contact me is social media, Instagram. I'm very, very fast answering Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just send me a message there and we can connect and then go from there. The DSD website is very complete, digitalsmiledesign.com. And there you have my info as well, my email, that you can send me an email as well. So it's either Instagram, Chris Coachman, LinkedIn, Christian Coachman, or digitalsmiledesign.com.
Awesome. So you are quite accessible for those looking. Christian, thank you. We could go hours longer, but want to be super respectful of your time. Thank you so much. We are highly, highly appreciative of you coming on, and we'll catch you guys next time. Take care.
Thank you guys.